Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Icelandic Roots podcast. I'm your host, Jack, and today we have a full house. We'll be joined by Julie Summers, the co-project manager of the Snorri program, who has been on our podcast here before. She will be introducing to us and discussing the Snorri Plus program, which we will specifically be highlighting in this episode. And in order to do so, we are joined by some participants of the program. Helga and Peter are a couple who did Snorri in 2025, and we are also joined by Diane, who is a 2024 Snorri alum. Together, they will share reflections and stories and insights and travel memories and things that they learned, people that they connected with during their times in Iceland. So to start off this conversation, we will let Julie introduce herself and kickstart us away on this journey.
Sure. So my name is Julie Summers. Like Jack said, I've been on the program before. That was, I think, sometime last year when I came on with my colleague Atli Geir Halldórsson. And together we are the project management team for the Snorri programs. That's a job that we've been doing for more than 2 years now. My path to the Snorri programs was pretty, well, I don't know if I want to say straightforward, but I was a participant myself back in 2012. So I'm originally from Washington State, and I did the young adult program, which at the time was 6 weeks. In the summer of 2012, it was my first time in Iceland, first time outside of North America, actually. And to say that it was life-changing would be a bit of an understatement. I ended up moving to Iceland, studying the language full-time at university there. And while I was living there, I joined the board of the Snorri Foundation, which runs the Snorri programs. And fast forward some more years, and I transitioned from board member to co-project manager. So the Snorri Plus program is the third of our programs that was created. So the original Snorri program began in 1999, followed by Snorri West in 2001, which was reciprocal. So those are both young adult programs and are a bit longer, five to 6 weeks for the one in Iceland, and usually around 4 weeks for the one in North America. And then in 2003, Snorri Plus started, and that's the program we're going to focus on today. So Snorri Plus was created to be sort of a miniature condensed version of the original Snorri program, but the emphasis is really the same. And the core structure is very similar. So it's a 2-week program, and the first week is in Reykjavik, where the group stays at a central hotel, really close to the Snorri office downtown, walking distance from all sorts of things. And that's the cultural and educational part. So we do all kinds of lectures, crash course in Icelandic language. We usually get to go meet the president, tour the parliament, all kinds of things. And then we have a week out in the countryside. And the exact area that we go to varies by year, of course. For a small country, Iceland is pretty big. And so you can really only do so much in that time if you don't want to be in the car the whole time. So I'm sure that Diane and Helga and Peter will all talk about the areas that we visited on their respective trips. But yeah, Snorri Plus is for those who are too mature, shall we say, for the original Snorri program. My understanding of its origins back then was, the original program was intended for about ages 18 to 28. And they started getting people, seeing this after a couple of years, what a great experience it was, and saying, wait, I'm 30 or I'm 35 or I'm 40 or I'm 50, and I want to do something. Like, where's my program? And so that is kind of where it came from. It's open to anyone over the age of 30, and we've had all kinds of different constellations of people. We've had, of course, married couples. We've had mothers and daughters, fathers and daughters, siblings, multi-generational family groups, and of course, friends and intrepid solo travelers as well. And one important thing to mention about Snorri Plus 2 is that it is not required to have Icelandic heritage to be on the program. So we welcome people who are what they used to call IBM, Icelandic by marriage, like Peter, which I'm sure he'll talk about a bit later. And also people who just have a burning interest in Iceland and want something that's more immersive and exciting than a regular tour package trip. So yeah, we've had more than 200 participants overall, I believe, in Snorri Plus. And I can't wait for Diane and Helga and Peter to talk a bit about their experience on the trip.
Yeah, thank you, Julie. I want to say as well, you mentioned you and Utley doing this for 2 years now, and just kudos to you guys. You've been doing great work on the Snorri programs, and I really have been excited to know both of you and watch sort of your work with this. And
well, thank you, but the program is only as good as the participants, and we've had amazing groups for our first 2 years doing this. So I've really been amazed, actually, at how much fun I've had with the groups.
Yeah, I imagine so. Most certainly. Okay, I think if we're going chronologically here, we will introduce Diane, right? Doing this in 2024. So we can give the floor to you, maybe an introduction about yourself and some stories, ideas, reflections about your time. And maybe to get started, actually, specifically, why did you do the program? What made you interested in it?
Well, thank you very much. And I echo your sentiments about the great job that Otley and Julie are doing. It's just a wonderful program. I first got involved with Snorri Plus quite a while back. I mean, I'm on the board of the Icelandic National League of the United States, and so we've been supporting Snorri and promoting both the Snorri and Snorri Plus and Snorri West programs for many years. But I had never participated in any of them. So an opportunity arose in 2024 that I thought, if I'm going to be promoting it, I might as well know what I'm promoting. So I started the application process and was accepted, and we just had a marvelous time. I was just really, really impressed by just the wide variety of programs that they have during the first week in Reykjavik. You have days that are either fully or partially in a lecture scenario. And we had many, many different types of programs. We learned about the history of Iceland. We learned about food. We learned language, wonderful field trips. We went to Parliament and got a tour there. Our group ended up at the U.S. Embassy for a tour there, as well as meeting the president. Our group was the first group that the new president had met with. So we were very honored by that. And just that week just flew by. We just had such a wonderful time. We had a wide variety of people on the trip as well. We had one who was under 30 and was allowed to come because of her school timing and scheduling and things like that. And besides the people from the U.S. and Canada, we had someone from Tajikistan. And that was, she was an American, and her husband worked for the Foreign Service. And so she decided to come and be part of the Snorri Plus program. And we had just a marvelous time.
Wow.
And so we had a really good time with it. And, we have lots of memories. I'm sure Peter and Helga will share some of those as well, but I'll turn it back to you.
Sure. Then, so this was 2024.
Yes.
Okay. And now Helga and Peter, you guys went, last summer, 2025. Okay. Well, then let's turn the mic over to you guys. Tell us a bit about a similar, question for you. Why did you guys do the program? What made you interested in it? And then some reflections on what you guys did in your year.
Well, we have traveled to Iceland many times, but the last time prior to 2025 was 2019. Then COVID hit, and we didn't go many places at all. I know about the Snorri program because I, like Diane, am a member of the Hekla Club, and there's always notices about INL and things and the Snorri program.
Well, I should also mention that our son was on the Snorri program with Anna.
Okay.
Yes, and
Before us, many
years ago, our son was in the second year of the Snorri program for 20-something. So I knew it was a good program. He just loved it for 6 weeks. We enjoyed our 2 weeks, but so I've been aware of it for a long time, 25 years, I guess. And so I knew that I wanted to travel to Iceland and see more things in Iceland. And last year, the trip was traveling to the east coast of Iceland, 1 week in Reykjavik, and then Egilsstaðir, and then heading north and east, north and then west from Egilsstaðir to Vopnafjörður,
Okay.
Akureyri, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 100% Icelandic. My mother was a World War II bride, and she grew up in Ísafjörður. My father was an Icelandic American who grew up in Minneota, Minnesota.
Wow.
His name was Val Björnsson. And so his side of the family came from the East Coast. But when we've traveled to Iceland, there aren't any close relatives on my father's side in Iceland. And there are my first cousins, and there were my mother's sisters who lived in Reykjavik. So we always would hang out with my mother's side of the family. So I wanted to see something of the East Coast, and the scenery was just marvelous. It's very wooded, very more rocky.
Mm-hmm.
I would recommend for a Snorri Plus person to do it before you reach a certain age and have limitations on your walking ability, as I do. But I still enjoyed seeing all the scenery, and I just hung back on some of the extra clambering that people get. But it was...
Well, if I can interrupt quickly, I mean, your husband, though, Peter, he was out in front every time. I mean, I was trying to keep up with him. I think he was leading the pack on most of our excursions.
Yeah.
I should introduce myself, I guess. I'm Peter Vischer, oldest husband. And the program was very, very flexible in the sense that it was something that you could do at various levels of mobility. My level of mobility was much higher than Helga's, but we still found things to do. And it was a very enjoyable trip, met very interesting people from Canada, and we had only one other person from the United States on our trip in 2025.
Yeah. The first week in Reykjavik was very good. We had we got to see the president. We went to Bessastaðir.
Nice.
We went to the
Canadian embassy.
The Canadian embassy.
Okay.
And met the Canadian ambassador. There was no American ambassador in residence in August, but just before we left, the man who's going to be the ambassador to Iceland was named. His name escapes me now, but
He's still not there, though. These things always drag out.
yeah, and the museum that included the original settlement in Reykjavik, I thought was fascinating. I wish it had more light. It was very dim in that basement, and the rest of the modern Reykjavik was also very interesting. For me, some of the classes were old hat because I know Icelandic history. I speak a little Icelandic, so the afternoon of Icelandic conversation was already very familiar to me, and I just need to increase my vocabulary and grammar. Um, I'm okay in pronunciation, but
we had to be pretty careful with Helga around because, when we have a typical Snorri or Snorri Plus group, there's very rarely someone who has, enough Icelandic knowledge to understand like our conversations from staff to staff or something. But with Helga, we didn't have that luxury. There was no secret language that we could use. So we had to be really careful on our toes all the time.
Well, I don't know. My parents used it as their secret language. So.
They learned.
But this is something, if I can just comment quickly, I think that is so much fun to see. With Snorri Plus, there is such a variety of participants and what their ties to Iceland are. Kind of the quote-unquote typical participant is similar to what the original young adult program was intended to be. People like me who have great or great-great-grandparents who emigrated in the, mid to late 1800s. But more and more, we're getting people in both programs who have much more recent emigration backgrounds. Helga is not the only one who we've had in recent years who was actually, had fully Icelandic parents. In Diane's year, we had a second Diane who was also born in Iceland and I think moved away when she was about 5. So I think that those having, people with very different backgrounds just really enriches the experience for everyone. And it's fun to see how even the people who've been to Iceland many times over the years, I think I'm correct in saying that they still get something out of this trip. It's still a different experience than what they would be getting, otherwise. So for me, that's really fun to see that variety.
I fully agree with that. I've been to Iceland quite a few times, but mostly just for vacation trips or to attend a conference or something like that. This class, the classes and the whole Snorri program really brought my education down a level to really much more. This is what Iceland is about. This is what the people are about. This is our history. This is our culture. So for me, it was really, really beneficial to learn more about that. And I have to say that for our Icelandic class, we had some very enthusiastic people trying to learn Icelandic, and I think we completely overwhelmed the instructor. We kind of went sideways on our class, but it was still very enjoyable, and we did learn the basics so that we could, say hello, goodbye, and thank you. So, but yep, every class was different.
Well, I visited the National Library and was given a tour, and the previous librarian had been, and a friend of mine over the years, she, Sigrun Clára Hannesdóttir, is a member of the American Library Association, so I would see her at both American Library Association meetings and at an international educators group I belong to. So she is no longer there, so but I got to see more of the background cataloging and acquisitions part of the library. I brought some books from home to donate to the library, and I have about 100 more. And these Icelandic books that I have are sentimental because they were always on my parents' bookshelf. And it would take me so long to read it. It would not be a pleasure for me to read them, but they're there, and I want them to go to good homes. Maybe a newer public library could use some of these older titles. And some are just beautiful leather-bound, fine books of Heimskringla and so on that I just don't belong in a dumpster.
Definitely not. This experience that Helga was talking about there is, just to explain quickly, is one part of the first week of the Snorri Plus trip is it's optional, but we offer what we call like a workplace or hobby visit. So because we have such a wide variety of ages and backgrounds, we'll ask each person, what do you do for work, or what did you do for work? If you were retired, what are some of your main hobbies? And then depending on the person's request, we find someone who works in their current or former field or shares, excuse me, the same hobby. So that we take basically one full day or at least a half day out of that first week to send people off on these kind of individualized excursions. And if someone opts not to, then they just have more free time. But we had in Diane's year, the other Diane, her husband is a trumpet player, an avid trumpet player. And he had mentioned on his application, his registration form, that he really would, kind of threw it out there as like a pipe dream. Oh, it'd be really fun to meet this, Iceland's most famous trumpet player, basically. Well, it's Iceland, so we were able to make it happen. And he got to go meet, his kind of his idol there. And we had also in that group a woman who owned her own bakery. She was a pastry chef, and she got to go to Brauðoko, one of probably the best known, most famous bakeries in Iceland these days, and also to a second one owned by a woman from France who immigrated to Iceland. So those are just a couple examples. And Peter also had a visit, I believe, with a physics professor. And Diane, you had at least one conversation with someone who worked in kind of a similar field, as I recall.
Yes, I got to meet with someone in the healthcare field who taught me all about healthcare billing and financing and things like that. I was in a similar position in U.S. healthcare and learned a great deal. So it was very, very interesting.
Can imagine there were some big differences in the systems there.
Well, I think he had as many questions as I had for him, so it was a very enjoyable dual learning session.
Which is great. It's just coming to mind a couple of the other ones we had this past year where we had a couple from Manitoba who had been farming their entire adult lives and were kind of in the process, I think, of gradually retiring, and they got to go meet with someone at like the Farmers Association in Reykjavik. Diane, in your year, we also had then Joanne, who worked in agricultural policy, kind of at the government level, and she got to meet with someone from one of the ministries in Reykjavik in the national government. And yeah, it's always, of course, a bit, it takes some time and effort to piece all of those visits together, but that's also one of the things that makes it a really unique program, that we do have all these personalized elements.
And I'm just thinking that it goes both ways. I feel like this is often not highlighted as much. We will usually focus, whether it's about Snorri or the different trips that Icelandic Roots will coordinate and offer. It's always about like, oh my God, we're learning so much on our end. But, talking about, in your case, Diane, with the healthcare interaction and having just as much questions going both ways, right? I think it is so cool providing these connection opportunities, because if you think about from the Iceland perspective, so many tourists coming and going, and of course that is bringing different elements of culture and ideas to Iceland. But, I would imagine more often than not, it's more like a transactional conversation, and you don't always have as much of an opportunity for the Icelanders to get to really connect meaningfully with the tourists, wherever they're coming from. And so providing these connection points, oftentimes it is those of us who have Icelandic roots ourselves, but, it isn't always, as you've pointed out. It's not a requirement for Snorri Plus. So there will be these connection points that is giving the opportunity for people in Iceland to have these meaningful connections, to learn things and have different perspectives from that point of view too. So I think that's a really cool element to this also, any of these sorts of trips. And, this is getting into the idea of what makes an experience like this different like a regular sort of tour trip or something like that. And it's funny, as you guys are talking about this, I was remembering just yesterday, someone was asking me at work. We were talking about, the aurora borealis, which have been so prevalent lately. You're not having to just visit Iceland for them; they're occurring in many places. And so we're talking about that, and of course, I mentioned, I saw them in Iceland, etc. And the person asked me, like, "Oh, were you there, like, on a tour group? Like, what was your experience going to Iceland?" And I was like, "Oh man, like, do we have an hour to talk about this? Like, this was way beyond just a normal kind of tourist experience. Not that those are not good. I think Iceland provides really good tourist opportunities for people, and they often seem to be very educated. But these things really go a step beyond, and it's just hard to impress that upon others, like just how much depth there is to these experiences. So those are just some side thoughts that I've been realizing as you guys have been talking here.
Well, and I would also note that these connections that you're talking about, being formed through, whether it's specifically through the work and hobby visits or, other parts of the program, some of those over the years have led to lasting friendships and lasting professional collaboration. Diane, I think you must know Jeannie, who's in the Hecla Club as well, I believe, right?
Yes, she is.
Yeah, she did Snorri Plus in 2017, if I'm remembering correctly. And she is in, help me remember what her work is exactly. Something to do with nonprofit management, I think.
Yes. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Philanthropy and nonprofits.
Right. And so she got to meet with someone at the University of Iceland while she was on Snorri Plus who, works in similar field in Iceland. And that led to her returning several times, collaborating on research. And I think 2 colleagues from Iceland ended up then also going to Minnesota and I think helping teach a course or something like that. So these visits, whether it's just the impact they make on you that day or over a longer period of time, they really are, I think, really special connections that you are unlikely to get on, a kind of a traditional tour group experience.
I should mention that I also went on what you're referring to as a work and hobby visit. I was connected up with a couple of people, one in the physics department at the University of Iceland and one in chemistry. Actually, both of them were people I've met before, but I had a better chance to talk to them for a while. And actually, the person in the physics department, whose name, oddly enough, is Snorri, it was his wife came along because his wife is a lawyer, teaches in the law school at the University of Iceland, and specializes in international law and war crimes. And I have been interested in sort of nuclear disarmament issues from the physics point of view, but she looks at those things from a legal point of view. And very interesting to talk to her about that. And it was a connection that you wouldn't expect to make through a program like this, but it very interesting to talk to her and to both of the guys at the University of Iceland.
Yeah, it's like an accidental connection or like a bonus connection. It wasn't even cultivated for you, just kind of happened. And I feel like in Iceland, because it's so small and everyone is so connected, I mean, you're never more than, 1 degree away from someone who knows someone who can put you in touch with the person you're trying to reach. So that's a good point that you do get just kind of these serendipitous bonus connections, which is really fun.
So true. Now, I promised at the beginning before we started recording that I wouldn't follow up Peter and a physics question, but he mentioned it. So, Peter, what can you say? Like, physics is not really mentioned so much as like a, leading industry or department for like Icelandic university or whatnot. So what did you learn about, the Icelandic physics department? What do they got going on over there?
Well, a lot of things. I mean, they're basically in the mainstream of international physics research. You can't really do that in a vacuum in one country. Everybody in the world goes. Every physics department in the world is working on the same things, basically. And so, actually, I had been, before I retired, I was working on problems involving magnetic information storage in computers. And the people that one of the people, Snorri, in fact, in the physics department, he had actually worked in the United States for a couple of years for IBM on a non-volatile magnetic information storage and devices that are very similar to the things that I had worked on simulations of. And so we have a lot of acquaintances in common and could talk about that. And the other person I visited was in chemistry. And actually, on paper, he and I have the strongest connection because I was actually on the thesis committee of one of his students who got a PhD at the University of Iceland. And in Iceland, it's a small country, so they have a requirement that PhD committees have to have at least one person from outside Iceland. And so I was the person from outside Iceland on your committee.
Very cool. So just in this conversation here, we have like a connection to physics, to healthcare, to libraries. That's like everything you need in the world, just right here. So we could solve all the world's problems within our.
Don't forget the bakeries and the music. Those are important.
Yes, all the elements. Yeah, and farming. And that's so cool to me, actually, it's kind of what I try to emulate within this podcast and within my other endeavors, just personally, is like connecting the dots between all these important elements in human society, right? And that's what struck me as well about the courses provided to us in the Snorri program was like this crash course in, all the major elements of Icelandic society, which to me was like a microcosm of the world. And it was just such a cool way. Like I don't know, I learned more or made more connections in my mind than any of the other schooling that I've done, really. Was just in those university courses, in the lectures that we had, and then the traveling around and continuing these connections. So I just find it very interesting. And we talked a little bit before we started recording here about, the concept of lifelong learning and pursuing educational courses like well beyond whatever the usual age is of like going to university. And I love that concept. I think it's growing in popularity. And I think something like the Snorri program, something like what we try to do with Icelandic Roots, really continues to promote that idea that learning is just fun and interesting, and it doesn't have to be done during a certain age or time period in your life.
I would also like to say that there are other ways that Snorri provides a connection point. And for me, I had been told that my great-grandfather's family had either all emigrated or they had married late and they hadn't had any children. My great-grandmother's side, I knew that there were relatives in Iceland, but I had been told they were all in the East. So during the Snorri program, or Snorri Plus program, they had one evening where they had, if you were Icelandic, they had your cousins come in. They tracked down cousins. Julie and Atle had worked hard to do that. And I was not expecting, anybody to come. And lo and behold, cousins on my great-grandfather's side came. And we had no idea that they even existed. And we had a delightful time talking with them. Also, on my great-grandmother's side, there was a nurse that came who is related down the line. And so now I have connections. And the next day, during our work day, I actually met with a different cousin. So now I have people I can contact and meet up with and share stories with and learn more about the family.
Mm-hmm. And it makes future trips to Iceland much easier, right? That's what I found. I wouldn't have been able to continue to visit Iceland the next few summers had I not really established these connections and a better understanding of, who's where, who can I connect with, who is, open and willing to do some things with me.
Well, and each connection can lead to kind of like a chain reaction of more connections. But this event that Diane is talking about, I just want to quickly say it's what we call like in Icelandic, I think your coffee, like the cousins cafe. So yeah, we Atli mostly makes a lot of cold calls in Icelandic and tracks down relatives who are in or near the capital area. And what's been really fun is that sometimes we even discover connections through that process to people that we already know or who are already connected to the program. And just two examples, one from each year. In Diane's year, we had two participants. Kirsten, who was the med student, so she was the youngest in the group by far because she originally was going to do the longer program but couldn't because of her schedule. It turned out that she and Eric, who was one of our Alberta participants that year, they were, I don't remember, second or third cousins or something, and they were both fairly closely related to the wife of Almar Grímsson, who people from the earlier years of Snorri all know. He is known as Avi Almar. He was one of the people who originated the entire program back in the 1990s. So that was really fun. We, to see their names pop up. Oh, we know them. And then this past year with Helga and Peter's group, we had one of our we had three solo ladies last year, and one of them, Jan, also from Alberta. It turned out that she was quite closely related to the Icelandic teacher who had taught the Snorri Icelandic lessons for many, many years. And that was really kind of fun because it's fun, and it's also a lot easier to call up and be like, hey, it's Atli from the Snorri program, and he doesn't have to explain what it is. She already knows. And they got along really well and are still in touch as far as I know. So those kinds of connections are also really fun to facilitate and to watch. Oh, and there was one more. I would also be remiss if I didn't mention Ellie, our driver for the past couple of years. When you do the Snorri or Snorri Plus program, you don't have like a faceless driver that you don't interact with at all. Like the driver is part of the group for both Snorri and Snorri Plus. And for Snorri Plus, the last couple of years, we've had a guy named Erlendur or Elli, and he's phenomenal. He has such a positive attitude. He brings so much joy and humor, even when things are challenging, with whether it's weather or hauling luggage in and out every day. But anyway, it turned out that he was friends with, or he knew someone who was like a very close neighbor to our farmer couple from Manitoba. So like they had some very close connection, and it took them like a couple days, to realize this, but then it was like, wait, we have they knew, the same people back from Manitoba, and that it's just not that surprising anymore because those things happen so often, but it doesn't make it any less fun when it happens.
And Ellie was more than just the bus driver. He gave us the real scoop on Icelandic politics, as well as made sure we had a good large carton of the rotten shark. How available?
Yeah.
And one night we thought we were going to get kicked out of the hotel because the smell was pretty overwhelming. But he was absolutely part of the group. He wasn't just the bus driver.
Well, maybe we should take that as a good transition to talk a bit about the tour part of the trip, maybe, because we kind of focused more on the Reykjavik part. I don't want to do your job for you, Jack, but it seems like I want to hear more from Diane's recollections of the tour part of the 2024 trip.
Yes, please.
And what some of the highlights were, or what sticks out in your memory, some favorite places or moments.
Yeah. Well, our group went north, so we were up in Akureyri, and we're supposed to go as far east as Húsavík. However, we had weather. That was the one thing I wish I had paid a little bit more close attention to before I left, because when we got on the bus to go north, we were still in Reykjavik, and the temperature was 0 Celsius, and it was August. So it was, everybody wanted it to warm up a little bit. It had snowed up north. But we had just great stops. We had a variety of farm stays, as well as staying in city hotels and things like that. And one night we stopped at a horse farm and for our evening, and we were able to see the horses and get a nice lecture on Icelandic horses and their maintenance. As I said, we had some weather, so we had to make some changes during the course of the trip. But honestly, if they had not told us about it, I doubt we would have known that we were supposed to go somewhere, but now we're going somewhere else. It just ran so smoothly, and I know that Julie and Natalie were on the phone, I don't know how many times a day during our trip, trying to make arrangements and do some pivots in that. But my knees were not in the best shape, so I was not able to climb Graubak, the crater, but many others were. I hope to do that now one day. And of course, we went to Hafsos for a couple of days and saw the immigration center there, which is just, really very special for the people from that immigrated, in the 1800s and early 1900s. So that's a very special place. We were there for 2 days. And we went to Mývatn. We went to Akureyri and spent a couple of days there, and went to the Forest Lagoon, which I think everybody in our tour highly recommended. That was a beautiful place and just a nice, well-timed respite from the tour. But yes, we had just a great time. We saw so many things. The Mývatn with all its uniqueness and all its scenery and if it wasn't raining and blowing, it would have been perfect. But it was Iceland, and so that was kind of expected.
Well,
So it was good.
I was going to say, I'm laughing a bit when you mentioned that area in particular, because that was the one day in 2024 that we had the worst weather, to the point where, like you said, we did unfortunately have to change our route and cut some things out because it just wasn't safe or enjoyable. But the day last year that we were in that area was the most beautiful, stunning weather. It was unspeakably gorgeous. Actually, I think we had 2 days. We had the one day that we did kind of what's been dubbed the diamond circle up there, so around Húsavík and Akureyri, Dettifoss and all of that. And then also, the day that we were in Akureyri, so I guess it was 2 days in a row, we had, I don't know, 17, 18 degrees Celsius, stunning weather. And I don't know if Helga and Peter would remember this, but I did tell them when we were in, right around Lake Mývatn, that the group of 4, so Diane's group, I have like one picture of like maybe 5 of you huddled up, with your raincoats, and you can't see like anything in the background. It was a stark contrast, but that's, of course, anywhere you go on vacation, you have to be prepared for some level of uncertainty. And in Iceland, it's just, to the extreme when it comes to the weather, and there's really nothing we can do about it except practice repeating the motto, "Þetta reddast." It'll be okay. We'll pivot. We'll do something else. And I've been really, it was really just kind of moving to me how understanding and kind everyone was when there was something, that we, of course, we feel terrible when we have to change plans, cut something out that someone was looking forward to. But people have always met that with such kindness and understanding. And then sometimes that leads to an experience that you wouldn't have had otherwise. So it can kind of go both ways.
Well, and it did lead to something, because when we stopped for lunch in Mivat, Julie was talking to the receptionist or the host in the restaurant, or someone in the restaurant. And after we finished and got back on the bus, Julie said, "Oh, Diane, by the way, you've got a family farm just down the road here. It's been occupied by the same family since, like the 1700s or something like that." And so, that was something that you would never, ever learn just stopping for a restaurant. So, they're always doing their job, always looking out for us.
Because, of course, it's fun to reminisce about the last couple summers with Snorri Plus, but we're also looking ahead to the summer that is swiftly approaching. I can't believe how quickly time has gone.
No.
And Snorri Plus 2026 will take place from August 17th to 30th, with the return to North America on August 31st, unless people decide to extend their trip, which quite a few people do, to have a bit of extra time on either end. But the program itself is August 17th to 30th. We've extended early bird registration to March 2nd. And what that means is that if you register by March 2nd, you get $200 off of the price. Pricing details can be found on our website, www.snorri.is, along with the registration form. And Snorri Plus is basically first come, first serve. So if you are considering it, I do encourage you to register as soon as possible. Like I was explaining at the beginning, the basic structure of Snorri Plus is the same every year. 1 week in Reykjavik and 1 week somewhere else out in the countryside. So for this year, while in Reykjavik, the group will be staying at the historic Hotel Holt, which is a landmark of downtown Reykjavik, just about a block away from the Snorri office. And it is not only a hotel, it is actually one of the largest art collections in Iceland. The original owners were big art collectors, and so every single room in the hotel has some amazing piece of art in it. So yeah, the group will stay there for the first week, come to the Snorri office for some lectures. We'll go meet the president, hopefully, if her schedule allows, do some museum visits, all kinds of things. And during those days, we also try to build in a good amount of free time so that you're not completely overloaded and you can also pursue your own interests. We're happy to help people, of course, to make plans for day trips or different activities as well in their free time. And then for this year's program, for week 2, for the tour part, we are going to see the best of the West. So we're focusing on West Iceland, and we will head up kind of towards the West Fjords, but not going all the way up there, to an area that has a big connection to the Icelandic sagas, staying at Dala Hotel in Sælingsdal. And then we will do the Snæfellsnes Peninsula, which is one of my personal favorite areas of the entire country. Some people say that it's kind of like Iceland in a nutshell because it's a relatively small peninsula, but it has such a variety of natural gems and things to see. So we'll do that. We will, of course, go up north a bit to Hofsós, to the beautiful Skagafjörður region where the immigration center is that Diane was talking about, I think. And Jack, of course, knows intimately, having been one of our alumni interns there a couple of years back. And then we will also dip down towards the area where the Golden Circle is, and we'll see that, but we'll also see some things that are a bit more off the beaten path. And then back towards Reykjavik, but actually go past Reykjavik, and the last night will be spent in Keflavik, so that those who have flights the next day can get up and head straight there. And like I said, a lot of people choose to extend their trips. And if you want to do that, we're also more than happy to help advise if there's, other areas of the country you want to see or other activities that you want to do. But yeah, that's our group, our trip this year for 2026. And like I said, the tour part, we kind of vary a little bit year by year, and that's for a couple reasons. One, so that we don't get bored. It's fun for us, of course, to get to see different places as well and introduce people to different areas. And then also because, people have ties to different parts of the country, and generally we'll be able to find some connection for anyone of Icelandic descent in each region. But yeah, especially people who know that they have roots in Western Iceland, I would really encourage you to consider registering for this year, because I don't know when we will be in that area again. That remains to be seen. Plans for 2027 and beyond.
And I would highly recommend considering coming a couple of days early, so that, some of us have a little bit more difficulty getting over jet lag than others. Having a couple days just to get reacclimated and get ready to start the program really helped me out a lot. So I would highly recommend people to take that into consideration.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that all sounds wonderful. And yeah, I hope as many people can join things like this as possible. This is also similar to the Icelandic Roots trips that they have been doing every other year. So I believe the next one would be 2027, and similar sort of things. So, there's good opportunities for these sorts of trips and programs. I think, of course, one maybe, well, there's the time, finding the time to do it, which I imagine, at least in theory, gets easier when you're in an older age and perhaps retired and have less sort of career, things. But then when you're in the younger age range, if you're not retired and haven't built out your career in that sort of way, then finances can be a concern. And Iceland, is constantly ranked as being one of the most expensive countries to travel to, which actually just told me that Canada is also a very expensive place, because I didn't find, like, in terms of groceries and that sort of a thing, prices were that different. It was actually very similar. I think when they say Iceland is so expensive, it's in like the if you're traveling there and renting a car and then staying in a hotel, those are the costs that add up quickly. Of course, it never makes it easy that when you fly into the airport, you have to then get transportation into Reykjavik. So I think that's another benefit to like the Snorri program or an Icelandic Roots trip. Once you have transportation for the program on the bus, and accommodations are pre-arranged for you, you're usually getting like a discounted, cheaper rate than if you're just booking everything on your own. Of course, there are early bird deals and these sorts of things to take advantage of. But I would also just say, like, I don't know how much this makes a difference, but just like supporting one another. There are so many people within Icelandic Roots, within the Snorri, within these communities that are like, publishing books and maybe selling their art or something like this. And I really want to encourage that sort of a mindset as well. People to encourage and support one another in those sorts of ways. And there's a fun quote by Bill Home where he said something like, I got into poetry for the money, which of course is not what you do. But I do think these things make a difference. When someone that you know has published a book or they're sharing their stories or something like that, I think it makes a difference when we do support one another in that sort of a way. And it's a little bit of a what comes around goes around. And so the more that everyone supports each other in these kind of ways, I think it does help in a marginal but meaningful way for allowing people to be able to be more flexible, to be able to afford things, and also just to maybe have the confidence to do things. So I don't know. I think it's worth thinking about as we wrap this up, as that can be a barrier to these things. But
I would say also that just anecdotally, I know just off the top of my head of at least a couple Snorri Plus participants who have published books um, after their time on the trip. So you can also kind of think of it as an investment. I mean, any kind of, you know, university education or any other kind of educational program, cultural exchange, something like the Snorri Plus program, it's always an investment of sorts. And I think that the vast majority of people, hopefully all people who've done it, would say that they feel like they got a really good return on that investment. Whether, for some people it is a fairly self-contained experience and doesn't necessarily lead to, those kind of really lasting ties, or maybe not for a while. People who do Snorri Plus when they are still in the middle of their careers, maybe it takes a bit of time before they are able to pursue their interest in genealogy more, or go back to Iceland for a second time or third time. Whereas for other people, it can really kind of change the trajectory of everything. And I know there's been at least a couple Snorri Plus participants, for instance, who already had an interest in writing, I think. But after the Snorri Plus program and all of the connections they made then, they pursued that even more and have published multiple books by now, and also returned to Iceland for the Iceland Writers Retreat and other experiences like that. So it is an investment, but I think that it is something that is so unique that it is well worth it.
Yes, without a doubt. It's a great path to becoming a super rich poet.
Which is the most Icelandic thing you could be. I mean,
certainly, without a doubt. But yes, I think that's actually a good point. I would attest to that. This is not financial advice, but it is a good return on investment. But again, it's, that's just sort of an aside. It's important to mention, but of course, all of this is about the experience and things that you could never put a dollar value on, which I think is just endlessly important and life-sustaining, really, and very fulfilling. So I don't know if we have any further thoughts to wrap this up. I'm not sure if Helga or Peter were able to rejoin. I do see them here, so I know they're listening along. If they're not able to add any more audio to this, then I thank them as well. And if we can all just have a moment to say goodbye, and then we can finish this up here.
Yeah, thanks so much, everyone, for sharing about your experiences. I had the time of my life traveling with your two groups, and I can't wait to meet this year's group, see who all is coming and where they're from, and how the group gels together, and to hopefully then by this time next year have a lot of really fun stories to tell from that trip too.
Yeah, thank you so much for allowing us to share.
Yes, and thank you for organizing this Snorri Plus, and I want to emphasize that this is great for IBMers, the people Icelandic by marriage. You learn a little bit of Icelandic, you learn a little bit of Icelandic history, and you see a whole lot of very nice scenery.
We'll take great care of you, whether you're of Icelandic descent or just along for the ride like Peter.
If this conversation sparked something for you, pass it along to a friend, a cousin, someone who's half curious about Iceland and fully curious about where they come from. You can dig deeper through the Icelandic Roots database if you're tracing names, stories, or loose threads in the family line. And genuine thanks to the Snorri programs, putting people in rooms, on roads, and into conversations that matter. We'll keep following the threads. Will you?